let's kind of go back to the early days at Uber, which is actually when you and I kind of first met.
Yes.
But could you maybe speak to a little bit of your experience there and kind of like what that, what that was like, first off, kind of working at, a larger company like Uber at the time, and then maybe some kind of like insights that you've taken with you there later on.
Yeah, absolutely. Working at Uber at that time was something that I was really, I went to business school and really wanted to experience that phase of a company, which was like high growth, non-IPO yet, and just still a lot of momentum and a startup-y vibe. And so at the time, we were working on UberPool and really scaling UberPool. So it was interesting to see the culture of a company that was, you know, transforming really from a really, really scrappy startup into a more mature company. And so witnessing kind of the codification of certain aspects of the culture, the clarification of certain, what is and isn't, really beneficial for the company, and watching the company work through that while continuing to push on these like crazy hard problems, and launch really complex new products. Like UberPool was, is an extremely complex product, right? Like requires a lot of optimization on the back end to make sure that the rides are efficient, that there's a high match rate, that there's, low cancellations, and that whole experience of seeing, how the organization launched and figured all of those kinds of difficult problems out was really fascinating.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So did you work on the product and or growth side or?
Yeah, exactly. So I was in product marketing, which meant I worked really closely with the product and ops teams in order to make sure that when we did launch a new product like UberPool and new features within the product, that we were able to really land the right messaging at the right time to the right people to drive growth and make sure that people were aware that we had this, new product out, and that, the benefits of that product were really clear.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Could you maybe share a little bit more to provide maybe like an example of some kind of like nuanced decisions around that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, really what is important when you're launching a new product is understanding your audience, right? And, doing a lot of research, both quantitative and qualitative, is super important so that you can really figure out what the barriers of adoption are and address those as head on as possible in like the smartest way. And so for UberPool, as you can imagine, the majority of the rider base for Uber at the time were people who were, requesting UberX or Uber Select, Black Car. So all of that was, a more sort of on demand, an audience that expected on demand instant service. And so transitioning to a new product like UberPool was definitely expanding the market, right? Because you were bringing on new people who maybe had never taken Uber before. So really understanding, okay, what are the barriers to someone who is already an Uber rider and wanting to try a new product like UberPool? And what are the barriers for someone who's never tried Uber and wants to try UberPool, right? So doing, a lot of research, doing focus groups, surveys, looking at the data and trying to make sense of what that picture really is, so that you can figure out the best way to, again, provide the right message at the right time to the right people. So for us, we figured out like, okay, UberPool obviously is a much more complex Uber ride experience, right? Like there's other people involved, there's like drop-offs and, pickups, and it can be potentially really disorienting for someone who's never experienced this, carpool ride. And so, figuring out what those biggest barriers were at the time were, meeting, having other strangers in the car with you, potential like social awkwardness around that, right? Estimated time for arrival. Like if I have all these other people that we're picking up and dropping off, like when am I even going to get to my destination? Right. And so those are the kinds of barriers that we surfaced. And so we addressed those barriers. And, in my opinion, growth always comes from both angles of product and marketing, right? And so product marketing kind of sits in the middle, where you can help, influence the strategy of like what features need to be built based on understanding your target audience. So for example, if not knowing what the time of arrival is for people is like a huge reason they won't request and try this product, then how do you solve for that? So on the product side, we were able to, provide an estimate, and, give a little bit of a window of time of when someone might arrive at their destination. And on the marketing side, we would figure out when to tell people, about this message, right? Do we send them an email? Is it a push notification? Do we have an in-app pop-up? How do we really get people aware that, this is something that we're taking seriously and we're addressing through both the product experience and also, on the promotional side, right? Like if we're late on UberPool and you're not meeting your estimated time of arrival that we quoted you, we'll give you, Uber credits towards your next UberPool ride. So figuring out kind of that system that really addresses the key pain points and, working collaboratively, cross-functionally to really figure out how can we make sure that people try this, retain, and we have a really strong growth rate around the product.